Hey guys, so for today's video in my History, Major Flaws, and Why They Got Cancelled series, it's unfortunately time to do the Dodge Hellcat, as its time as a new car being produced from the factory is almost up. For these types of videos, I look at the history of the car, major flaws, and why it got cancelled, as the title says. I've done a lot of different Mopar cars, so if you like this type of video, check out my playlist in the top right corner. The Hellcat engines have been under the hood of 5 different vehicles: the 2015 to 2023 Dodge Charger and Challenger, the 2021 and 2023 Dodge Durango, the 2021 to present Ram 1500 TRX, and the 2018 to 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk. The Trackhawk has already been cancelled and got an episode of its own, while the TRX lives on for now, so this video will solely be focusing on the trio of Dodge vehicles. So in these videos, the first part focuses on looking back at the history of the car and all the details and specs, including the development of the Hellcat and the creation of its name and logo, the pricing and lineups, visual, interior, and performance, and then we jump to talking about the events that led to the car being cancelled and any flaws that it had. The Dodge Hellcat had a good life with 9 model years before being cancelled. First, let's talk about the development of the Hellcat. I'd also like to do a separate video covering the engineering aspects for these engines and why certain things were done, but we don't have time for that today. The man largely responsible for the Hellcat existing would be Chris Cowland. Cowland was born in Cambridgeshire, England, and would work his way up to the Director of Advanced and SRT Powertrain for Fiat Chrysler. The Hellcat idea first came alive in 2011 when Cowland approached FCA's corporate product forum, which included the top 20 executives, like the CEO at the time, Sergio Marchionne. Cowland talked about this, saying, quote, "You can bring any idea to the product forum. If you can make a business plan, you can plead your case." End quote. The original target was 600 horsepower to make the most powerful muscle car, surpassing Ford's Shelby GT500 Mustang. Word then got out that Ford was also developing a Mustang engine with over 600 horsepower as well, and that engine would end up being the 5.8-liter supercharged V8 under the hood of the 2013 Ford Shelby GT500 with 662 horsepower. The FCA executive did not want to develop all of this just to come in second place, so Cowland's team had to up the ante with a new goal of 675 horsepower. The executives were on board, but they didn't get additional time for development, and it had to have the same fuel economy that they promised at 600 horsepower. Cowland said that, quote, "The timing was a real concern. Internally, the team's target had always been 700 horsepower. We like to over-deliver, but we'd expected more time," end quote. And this time, everything was done in full secrecy. Some parts of the product development team didn't even know that the powertrain team was working on this 700 plus horsepower engine. People working on one part didn't know what others on a different part were doing. The horsepower tests were verified by the Society of Automotive Engineers, but the numbers were never released within the company, keeping everything a secret. Cowland said it best, quote, "We built it because we could. We wanted to make a statement and move the brand forward," end quote.
There's a car that we're going to show you today that I think you can guess what it is. This is a car that most brands would never bring to market. This is a car that really absolutely does not have a business case for it. This is a car that doesn't fit in any automotive segmentation. Sometimes you need to build a car that just defines itself. The 2015 Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat. This is the quickest, fastest, and most powerful sedan in the world.
Dodge named it after the Grumman F6F Hellcat, which was a World War II American carrier-based fighter aircraft used in the Pacific War from 1942 to 1945. 12,275 of those were built, and they are said to have destroyed 5,223 enemy aircraft in service. The F6F Hellcat had a 2,000 horsepower, 46-liter, 18-cylinder engine called the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, and it even featured a supercharger too. The definition of a Hellcat is a bad-tempered, spiteful woman, so that also fits the bill. The director of Dodge and SRT once said, quote, "It just fits the car. It fits the engine and the sound of it. This one just had so much strength behind it," end quote. And if you're wondering, the other name that was seriously being considered was Alley Cat. As for the logo, originally Dodge didn't plan for one. You'll notice that the first media photos of the car at press events and photo shoots had supercharged fender badges only, and that would include this white Charger and green Challenger that you'll see on screen somewhere. Dodge CEO Tim Kuniskis said that the logo itself was a very last-minute change driven by feedback on social media. You can see the many iterations considered, but ultimately we're now familiar with the fierce, aggressive cat logo that's baring its teeth and pulling its ears back. When announced in 2014 as a 2015 model year, there was just the one trim level for the Challenger Hellcat, replacing the previous SRT8 model and starting at $58,295. 2018 saw the introduction of the wide body, and going forward that would add $6,000 and later $7,000 to the cost of a Hellcat or Red Eye. The Demon was also introduced in 2018. 2019 saw that Red Eye unveiled, and that meant the cost of the regular Hellcat went down several thousand as a marketing tactic, and due to the Red Eye's increased price. Moving to 2022, the Challenger Hellcat lineup kept expanding, ranging from $70,835 for a base Hellcat to over $88,000 for a Superstock, and add another $26,000 for the convertible. The Charger was typically a bit more expensive, starting at $62,295. The Charger would get things 2 years after the Challenger, so a wide body in 2020 and a Red Eye in 2021. Once again, the wide body added $6,000 to the MSRP, but unlike the Challenger, you could only get the Charger Hellcat and Red Eye in wide body form, as Dodge removed the regular body option. By 2022, a jailbreak reached almost $90,000. The Durango is much simpler, offered just for the 2021 and 2023 model years, starting at around $83,000 and now rising to over $91,000 for a base Hellcat. Next, we'll move on to the visuals. Both the Charger and Challenger got a facelift for 2015, but we'll cover the Challenger first. The exterior featured a new grille with design cues from the 1971 Challenger, quad LED halo ring headlights, LED taillights, and functional hood intakes on all the models. The Hellcat didn't have a huge visual difference at first from the other models. The front end was more open with a mesh upper and lower grille for more airflow, a larger front splitter, a small rear lip spoiler, and a different hood with a larger middle intake flanked by two smaller ones. The wheels were wider than other models, 20 by 9.5 inch with the Hellcat specific designs. Under those wheels you could find 6-piston front and 4-piston rear red Brembo calipers. 2018 saw the limited edition Demon introduced, but I want to dedicate another video to that in the interest of time here, so we're not going to talk too much about that today. 2018 saw the introduction of the wide body as well, a $6,000 to $7,000 option to add on to any Hellcat model. This was instantly noticeable with 3.5 inch wider fender flares integrated into the front and rear fascias, side sills, 20 by 11 inch wheels with 305/35 ZR20 Pirelli P0 performance tires, and a Bilstein 3-mode adaptive damping competition suspension. The following year, 2019, saw the Hellcat Red Eye introduced, and that got a sizable increase in power, which we'll talk about in the performance section of the video. From 2019 onwards, all the Challenger Hellcats have an updated dual snorkel hood design. Dodge then added the Superstock for 2020 and up models. This slotted above the Red Eye and below the Demon, and had lightweight 18-inch wheels with the same drag radials as the Demon, along with lighter 4-piston calipers and 14.2-inch rotors, instead of the Red Eye's 6-piston calipers and 15.4-inch rotors. To round out the Challenger, starting in late 2022, Dodge opened a convertible option for all the Hemi V8 models at an extra cost of $25,999. As for the Charger, the 2015 version also got an exterior makeover with a new front grille and rounded LED headlights and a slimmer racetrack taillight. Dodge claims that they reworked almost every panel on the car to look leaner and more athletic than its previous look, while keeping the same dimensions. The Hellcat Charger initially shared a hood with the Challenger and featured a redesigned front fascia with a larger lower grille. 2019 interestingly got a snorkel design flanking the grille on either side, but that was quietly removed after that model year once Dodge shifted to the wide-body look. As mentioned, that wide-body came in 2020, and it was essentially the same as the Challenger, with a bit of a different look with a revised front end with a mail slot grille. The Red Eye came in 2021, again not much to distinguish it aside from a beefier hood, with a slightly different scoop design, and an updated Hellcat logo with a red eye on the cat. On both the models, 2022 saw the new jailbreak trim levels. The purpose of this was to allow customers to unlock ordering restrictions and mix and match their options when building a new vehicle, and it just added a lot of options that were previously unavailable, like stripes and decals, wheels, caliper colors, badges, seats, steering wheel badges, interior trim, carpets, spoilers, and more. As for the Durango, it arguably looks the most different than the other non-Hellcat models. First, there's an SRT front fascia that comes with a lower valence cold air intake that replaces fog lamps to allow even more air to fuel the engine. The grille and chin splitter help to prioritize more airflow. The body's a bit wider than normal with wheel flares, and it also uses wider 20 by 10 inch wheels with 295/45 ZR20 tires, and red 6-piston front and 4-piston rear red Brembo brake calipers. Of course, you'll also notice throughout the video the high impact colors offered on all the models, like Toured, F8 Green, Go Mango, B5 Blue, and Plum Crazy, just to name a few. Now for the interiors, they share the same design and space as the lesser models, but Dodge has done fairly well to show that this isn't any regular base model. They each get a 200 mph speedometer, heated and ventilated front seats, flat bottom steering wheel with SRT logo, paddle shifters, and a T-shifter. Dodge added some nicer packages in the last few years, like the carbon and suede option that adds real carbon fiber and a suede headliner. As for the seats, all of them are embroidered with the SRT Hellcat logo. They used to be standard Napa leather with Alcantara suede that keeps drivers glued to their seats, with the option of Laguna leather seats in black, sepia, or demonic red for between $995 to $3,890. For whatever reason, all 2022 Challenger Hellcats and Red Eyes unfortunately come with houndstooth cloth seats standard, with both the other options costing extra. So that was a pretty shocking move from Dodge, and you can see those seats on screen right now. The Durango, of course, features a third row that can be folded away. As for the infotainment system, the cars have an 8.4-inch Uconnect 4 system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, while the Durango got upgraded to a 10.1-inch Uconnect 5 system. All the Hellcats have SRT drive modes to control transmission shift speeds, steering, paddle shifters, traction, and suspension, and the SRT performance pages to monitor key metrics like temperatures, G-forces, and driving and braking times. Next up is performance, of course the single most important part of the Hellcat, and the reason why it was produced. Remember, Chris Cowland, the director of advanced and SRT powertrain for Fiat Chrysler at the time, said the team had been aiming for over 700 horsepower to overtake the 2013 Shelby GT500 with its 662 horsepower. Upon release, the Hellcat had a 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8 engine, pumping out 707 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque, so the engineers hit their goal. Due to aerodynamics, the Charger was typically just a bit quicker than the Challenger, but both cars ran mid-3-second 0-60s and mid-11-second quarter-mile times. 2019 and up Hellcats got an increase to 717 horsepower and 656 pound-feet of torque thanks to some tuning and a change to the intake. The Durango Hellcat had slightly different numbers, with 710 horsepower and 645 pound-feet of torque. Even though the SUV weighed 5,331 pounds, it was still able to do 0-60 in 3.6 seconds and the quarter mile in 12 seconds, helped by the standard all-wheel drive system. The Red Eye, whether Charger or Challenger, got a slightly less powerful Demon engine thanks to a smaller hood intake system and without the Demon crate, of course. This is still a 6.2-liter supercharged V8, but the supercharger has increased from a 2.4-liter on the regular Hellcats to a 2.7-liter, and overall there are many different components like the air intake system, cylinder heads and camshaft, the block, rotating assembly, exhaust, cooling system, and more. If you want to investigate all the differences very in depth, I have made a video comparing the Red Eye engine to a Hellcat engine that goes very deep on all of those topics. You can also quickly recognize a Red Eye by the badge on the top of the supercharger housing. The result is a pretty sizable increase with 80 more horsepower up to 797 and 61 more pound-feet of torque up to 717. Top speed for the Challenger widebody is 199 miles per hour, while the Charger Red Eye widebody holds the record for fastest production muscle car as it's able to hit 203 miles per hour. Due to the fact that it's hard to put down all this power thanks to traction, the Red Eye 0-60 times are very similar to the Hellcat, with the time around 3.5 seconds and the quarter mile said to be around 10.6 seconds stock. The Super Stock uses the same engine with just a bit more power, up to 807, thanks to a redline increase from 6,300 to 6,400 RPMs. Dodge now says that this version is the world's quickest and most powerful muscle car, with a 0-60 mile per hour acceleration of 3.25 seconds and a quarter mile time of 10.5 seconds at 131 miles per hour. The top speed is limited to 168 miles per hour due to the tires. The other part of the powertrain that many overlook would be the transmission. Most commonly, you'll find a Hellcat paired with a TorqueFlite 8 HP90 8-speed automatic, and in fact, that's the only option for the Charger and Durango Hellcats and all the Red Eyes and Super Stocks of the three vehicles as well. The regular Hellcat Challenger did get the option of a 6-speed Tremec TR6060 manual from 2015 to 2021, then production was temporarily stopped around 2022, and Dodge brought it back this final year for 2023. The automatic actually adds a $2,995 price tag on the regular Hellcat, so the manual would save you some money, but not time. Car and Driver tested a manual Challenger Hellcat, doing a 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, and the quarter mile in 12.4 seconds at 120 miles per hour, times that are well below the automatic counterpart and dipping down into Scat Pack territory. Other performance features now found on all Challenger and Charger Hellcats include launch control, launch assist, line lock, torque reserve, race cooldown, and electric power steering, the details of which you can read on screen. Of course, then came that fateful day. At the end of the 2021 Los Angeles Auto Show in late November, Dodge CEO Tim Kuniskis did an interview with Motor Authority, saying, quote, "I will have this car, this platform, this powertrain as we know it, through the end of 23. There's 2 more years to buy a Hellcat, then it's history," end quote. So he confirmed that the Hellcats would be produced through the end of the 2023 model year, and then it will no longer be sold new from the factory by Dodge. The Dodge brand later released another quote confirming this, and looking ahead to producing future electric cars instead. So that brings us to the next part of the video, looking at the reasoning for the cancellation and the flaws of the Hellcats. I've come up with a bunch of different reasons and or flaws that refer to the car or Dodge decision making. So let's have a look. Years prior to the announcement of the cancellation of the Hellcats, Dodge CEO Tim Kuniskis had mentioned compliance costs and environmental regulations several times, and this is the single most important factor in why they are gone. By talking about compliance costs, Kuniskis is referring to regulations such as the Corporate Average Fuel Economy, or CAF, in the United States, where vehicles across a specific brand's lineup must reach a certain threshold each year with respect to miles per gallon. While the engine would still meet emissions regulations, Dodge would have to pay a lot of money to comply with the emissions fines. The Hellcats are rated for 13 city miles per gallon and around 21 to 22 miles per gallon on the highway. I'll post some different CAF requirements which show specific target curves in MPGs. There are different numbers for cars and trucks, but they go up each year, making it harder and harder to be compliant. Kuniskis echoed this sentiment by saying, quote, "You can still meet emissions with these cars. You're going to pay a lot of compliance fines," end quote. And this was the line in the sand for Dodge, unable and unwilling to continue producing these vehicles despite everything the Hellcat had represented for the brand. Another massive factor of importance here is that Dodge believes that electric vehicles can continue to enhance their future performance more than the Hemi V8s can. Dodge has said that every gain in horsepower resulted in a gain in market share as they continue to upgrade the performance of their Hemi V8 engines. Kuniskis has said that the Dodge engineers had reached a practical limit of the performance that they can achieve from those internal combustion engines, and they believe the electric motors can give them more. The key word here is practical. Dodge theoretically could spend millions to make another amazing powerful V8 or improve the current Hellcat, but it just wouldn't be practical from a business standpoint. Whether they're right or wrong about that, only time will tell. So Dodge views these EVs as a natural evolution of the muscle car, and this evolution can provide more horsepower and better performance times, as they say. So they want to chase down the Tesla Model S Plaid, the gold standard of performance with a 0 to 60 in 2 seconds flat and a quarter mile in just 9.3 seconds, and there are more competitors emerging like Rivian and Lucid Motors. Dodge feels that they can't catch them with the gas engines, so they will attempt to do so with the EVs, like the Charger Daytona SRT Banshee. Now we can look at a few flaws and problems and really nitpick certain items that are related to the car. Note that these would just be flaws that I would cover in every episode of this series, and they're not necessarily responsible for the cancellation of the vehicle. So one issue with the Hellcats was with the supercharger. This affected some 2015 and 2016 models, where the supercharger would make different weird whining noises due to bad bearings in them, resulting in less boost. If ran long enough, the supercharger would fail, although that has only been reported to happen in just a handful of cases. Dealers would fix the problem under warranty by replacing the complete supercharger, and after February 2017, all the superchargers were updated to a new AG part number with new bearings. So that's fixed the issues for the new Hellcats. However, those buying 2015 and 2016 models used should be wary of this, as if they're out of warranty, the supercharger is a $10,000 to $12,000 US part. When those bearings go out in these superchargers, it will have a grinding rattle as if metallic beads are being shaken inside the supercharger, and here's a video example of a good one and a bad one. I had to bring up the interior. While the Hellcat isn't at all meant to be a luxury vehicle, there are always some complaints about the interior due to the price point, now $80,000 to $90,000. The cabin is spacious, of course, with a sporty instrument cluster and the reliable 8.4-inch Uconnect system, but otherwise it feels a bit cheap. The one thing that stands out would be the abundance of cheap plastics. Those are found on the glove box and lower door trims, for example. The 8.4-inch screen was also never upgraded to the 10.1-inch screen, like in the Durango, and there's a lack of a physical driving mode selector. You gotta do it on the screen. To make matters worse, 2022 and 2023 Hellcats come with those houndstooth cloth seats that we mentioned standard, which is utterly ridiculous and inexcusable. I'd argue a 10-year-old, $40,000 Lexus has a far nicer interior, despite being tens of thousands cheaper. So there could have been some improvements inside. Another flaw would be oil cooler and radiator lines leaking early on, which likely comes down to a defective part. The upper radiator hose clamp can fail, resulting in coolant weeping from it, and it was a common enough problem that Dodge had a TSB for this on March 21st, 2015. The other problem is that owners were finding pooling of oil under the car. For this issue, there was a safety recall in 2017 for over 1,200 Hellcats built from February to May of 2017, and Dodge said that these vehicles may experience separation at the crimped joining of the rubber hose to the aluminum tube, risking oil spray, engine seizure, and potential risk of fire. Another thing to touch on would be stock drive shaft issues. The Hellcat drive shafts are prone to excessive movement during launch, and early on there were many complaints on forums like Hellcat.org about drive shaft noise and vibrations on these cars, especially when owners were taking the car to the track with sticky tires or drag radials. It was so widespread that Dodge again released a TSB for this on June 24 of 2016, stating that the customer may hear a whining noise coming from the rear axle area, and this applied to Challengers built before October 15 of 2015 and Chargers built before March 28 of 2016 with the 230mm rear axle, 2.62 or 3.7 rear axle ratio, and an anti-spin differential. If the tech heard the whining noise, they would change the drive shaft. It also appears the part numbers were continuously updated to try to fix the issue, so eventually there were 6 or 7 part numbers, but the issue was eventually resolved. The final thing I wanted to mention as a flaw would be the weight of these Hellcats. They get the butt end of a lot of jokes that call them boats, and many complain that they are so heavy compared to other muscle cars. And of course, weight reduces performance. When compared to the Mustang and Camaro, the Challenger Red-Eye is 300 to 500 pounds heavier, and the Charger is typically 150 pounds extra on top of that. Just look at what Dodge accomplished with the Challenger Scat Pack 1320 and the Demon when they shaved off some weight. I feel that cutting some of the weight on these Hellcats would have reduced the performance times even further. So to end off the video, the supercharged Dodge Hellcats were a hit from day one, oozing with power and good looks in a badass package. They have become an icon for the entire Dodge brand, starring in boisterous commercials and plastered across social media. There are millions of Instagram posts, thousands of rap lyrics about them, and a quick YouTube search shows that just about every car enthusiast around the world wants to get their hands on one. It became the dream car for millions of North American teenagers and young adults like myself, replacing the Viper and the original muscle cars from 50 years ago that did the same for past generations. But as Geoffrey Chaucer wrote in a poem way back in the 1300s, quote, "All good things must come to an end," end quote. And here we are at the end of the Dodge Charger, Challenger, and Durango Hellcats. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed taking a long and in-depth look at the Dodge Hellcats. Make sure to like and subscribe for all your Mopar content, and I'll see you all in the next video.